Hello friends, this is Bhushan and we are learning about constitutional, administrative and judicial developments during British era. Till now we have seen the Regulating Act of 1773 and Pitt's India Act of 1784. Now we will look into Charter Act of 1793. Its important provisions are: it renewed the company's commercial privileges for next 20 years. The company, after paying the necessary expenses like salaries, etc., was to pay 5 lakh pound annually to British government. Royal approval was mandated for appointment of Governor General, governors, and Commander in Chief. Senior officials were debarred from leaving India without permission. Doing so was considered as resignation. Then the company was empowered to give licenses to the individuals as well as company employees to trade in India. The licenses known as privileges or country trade. Here the question can be asked through the Charter Act of 1793. The licenses company empowered to give licenses to individuals only or to company employees only, but that is not the case as it empowered the company to provide licenses to individual and company employees. Then revenue administration was separated from judiciary. Again, this is important point. This led to the disappearance of mal adalats. Home government members were to be paid out of Indian revenues, which continued till 1919. So these are some of the important provisions of 1793 Charter Act. Now we will look into Charter Act of 1813. So some of its important provisions are: it business first we will look into the reason for passage of this act. The business interests were pushing for end of company monopoly because of spirit of laissez-faire and continental system of Napoleon. In continental system, the British navy or the British ships were prohibited from entering the European markets. So this obviously led to the closure of British good to the European market. So the British traders were looking for alternative markets. Then these two reasons paved the way for passage of Charter Act. Some of its important provisions are: it ended the company's monopoly over trade in India, but retained the trade with China and trade in tea. Then company shareholders were given 10.5% dividend on revenue of India. It allowed to retain territories for next 20 years without prejudice to the territories of Crown. Thus, the constitutional position of British territories in India was defined explicitly for the first time. The powers of Board of Control were further enlarged. Then rupees 1 lakh was to be set aside for the education. Regulations made by Council of Madras, Bombay and Calcutta were now required to be laid before British Parliament. This again shows the constitutional position of British territories in India was explicitly defined for the first time. Then separate accounts were to be kept regarding commercial transaction and territorial revenues. Christian missionaries were also permitted to come to India and preach their religion. These are some of the important points of Charter Act of 1830. Now we will look into Charter Act of 1833. Here, the lease of 20 years to the company was further extended. Territories of India were to be governed in the name of Crown. Company's monopoly over trade with China and trade in tea was ended. Also, all restrictions on European immigration and acquisition of property in India were lifted. This way was paved for wholesale European colonization of India. The question can be asked: which Charter Act paved the way for European colonization of India? It is Charter Act of 1833. Then in India, financial, legislative and administrative centralization of government was envisaged. We have seen that in Regulating Act of 1773, the centralization was started and it raised or it went to the peak in Charter Act of 1833. Here, the Governor General was given the power to superintendent, control, and direct all civil military affairs of company. Bombay, Bengal, Madras, and all other territories were placed under complete control of Governor General. All revenues to be raised under authority of Governor General, who would have complete control over the expenditure too. Government of Madras and Bombay were drastically deprived of their legislative powers. Then a law member was added to the Governor General Council in Charter Act of 1833. Indian laws were to be codified and consolidated. No Indian citizen was to be denied employment under the company on the basis of religion, color, birth, descent, etc., though the reality was different. The administration was urged to take steps to ameliorate the condition of slaves and to ultimately abolish the slavery. Slavery was abolished in 1843. So these are some of the important points of Charter Act of 1833. This is sufficient for this lesson. The next Charter Act of 1853 we will see in next lesson. So thank you.